Okay, I'm sorry, I had technical difficulty. So again, I'm back to with today's pearls of wisdom, and we're talking about when the person you need to forgive is staring you back in the mirror. And so, forgiving yourself is tough. I find it easier for me to forgive other people because sometimes I feel maybe they don't know any better. But when it's something that I've done, I often think, oh, Cherie, you knew better than that. You knew you shouldn't have done that. And so the condemnation for myself is much tougher because of that. So, and I guess my question to you is, can you think of anything that you've done that you find that's hard to forgive? Maybe you are divorced and the guilt that you feel from failing at something that was so important to you is hard for you to forgive. Maybe you were unfaithful in your relationship and you know that that's completely outside of your character. Maybe you're a woman and you once had an abortion and that act is very hard for you to get beyond. Um, Maybe you had a loved one who was ill or that needed you and you weren't there for that person and then they later passed. Maybe you were in an abusive relationship and you knew you should have gotten out of it, but you didn't know how, or that you took much longer to get out of it. Or maybe if you're a guy, you were the abuser. You were the one who was abusing someone and you deal with the guilt of the fact that you were abusive in a relationship. Maybe you weren't there for your children. Maybe you're a woman and you were in a relationship with a guy and he couldn't care less about your children and you put your children on the back burner. Hi, Keith, my cousin Keith. Maybe you put the kids on the back burner for the relationship with the guy. And so that's something that's hard for you to forgive, especially as you get older and your children now have they may have attitude towards you, or they may feel like they don't want you in their life, or you've allowed past relationships or past things to negatively influence your life today, and you sit and frustrated with yourself that you're allowing these things to control your current behavior. And so how does unforgiveness for yourself, how does it manifest itself? For some people, it's overeating. You're so mad and frustrated at yourself, you just continue to eat. For others, it's you're retreating in life. You don't really participate in your life. You allow life to happen to you instead of getting out there and making life happen. It could be anger. You're angry at yourself, yet you're taking that anger out on your loved ones, your children, your spouse, whomever, over things that you allowed in your life or something that you've done. It could be dreams deferred or dreams killed. Maybe when you were younger, you had dreams of being this great entrepreneur, going out and doing all these wonderful things, or having this beautiful marriage and family. And because of the mistakes in your past, you've decided that that's not what you want, or that you don't deserve that. I actually have a friend who, in her younger years, used to get involved with married men. And so now she has decided that she doesn't deserve to be married. And I had to share with that friend, no, ma'am, that's not the case. You do. Hi, Jessica. That she does deserve to be married. Just because she made mistakes in her past doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve that. Hi, Keisha. How you doing? So it could be dreams deferred, or in the case of me, it could be hiding from God, and like we really can hide, right? But in my situation, which I'm about to get into, that's exactly what I did. I stopped going to church. I stopped reading my Bible. I stopped praying. All of that because I knew what I had done was wrong. Instead of using that time to turn to God, I used it to hide from him. So here's the thing that I've had to encounter that was the hardest for me to get over. So I struggle with my role in the my marriage being dissolved. I was unfaithful in my marriage. And not only did I do that, but then I ran. I left the marriage, I left my household, I left my son, my husband, and on top of that, ended up living with a person that I had the affair with. And it was traumatic for everyone involved. It was traumatic for my then husband. It was traumatic for my son. It was traumatic for our families. You know, we did a great job of blending our families. It was hard for me to understand that I had hurt my best friend in that way. And because of my guilt from it, then I continued to stay in that other relationship. And any one of my friends can tell you that they didn't even recognize me during those years that I was with that other person. I felt like my punishment was to be unhappy, that I didn't deserve to be in a good relationship, that I deserved to be, it was not a healthy relationship at all. I was separated from my family, from my friends at that time. It was bad. But I lived in it because I felt like I deserved it. I honestly felt like I deserved it because I had been in church my entire life. So I knew what I had done was wrong. When I was in the midst of doing it, I knew it was wrong. But then when I saw the hurt on my family, it was unbearable for me. And it was such that I felt that I deserved to be punished. And I did go through a stage where I did get to the point where I asked God to forgive me. But it took me 7 years to ask myself to forgive myself. And I'm trying not to get emotional, but it's still hard. But I come to realize that that is something I did. It's not who I am. I'm not that person. That's just something that I did. So we all are so quick to want to forgive others, but we need to and deserve to forgive ourselves. We need to forgive ourselves. Just think about it. God thinks the world of you. He thinks the world of me. I'm the apple of his eye. You're the apple of his eye. If you're a parent and you have children that have done something that you disapproved of, they disappointed you in some kind of way, you don't go the rest of your life thinking about that one thing that child did. You think about their potential, their future, how smart they are, talented they are, all of their, you see more potential in them sometimes than they see in themselves. And that's how God is with us. He's my daddy and he loves me. And I know that. I know that now. What I failed to realize back then is when I asked God to forgive me, he not only forgave me, he forgot about it. It's erased out of his books. He doesn't constantly think about it. I was constantly thinking about it and constantly determining what I felt my punishment should be. God doesn't define you by the mistakes that you make. He doesn't. Like I said earlier, it could be something you did, but it is not who you are. It's just something you did. Just think about it in the Bible. And that's why I love God's word, because he gives you an example for almost everything going on in your life. Not almost everything going on in your life. So think about David in the Bible. You hear all these wonderful things about David. He defeated Goliath. He was such a warrior. He he was a king. He was, at 13, he was told he was going to be the next king. All these wonderful things. And then you hear God say that David is a man after his own heart. And you think, oh, this dude can't do any wrong, right? Wrong. David slept with Bathsheba, who was a married woman. And not only did he sleep with her, but he had her husband killed. But God said he's a man after his own heart. How does that happen? And if David can sleep with a married woman and have her husband killed, and God still says he's a man after his own heart, then guess what? God loves me too. He loves you too. And he sees the good in you. He sees the potential that you have. So we got to stop beating ourselves up over these things. So now let's talk about, how can you forgive yourself? How can you do it? Because it's not easy. So I think the first thing you need to do is acknowledge the mistake to yourself. Acknowledge it to God. Ask God to forgive you. Not only God forgive me, but God help me to forgive myself, because that's a difficult thing. Instead of retreating from God like I did, turn to God, because there's so much comfort in that, and ask him to help you to forgive yourself, and understand that the moment you sincerely, with your whole heart, ask God to forgive you, he's forgiven you and forgotten about it. If possible, make amends. Depending on what the mistake is that you may not be able to make amends. Maybe that loved one is gone. In my case, I had to make amends with my ex-husband, and it took us years. It took years to get to a place where we are today. Just, co-parenting, and even though our son's an adult, we still co-parent because he needs it. And also to just to be friendly, because our families are still family, and so we still have to be around each other. And we've gotten to that point, but I had to make amends. I had to go and to say that I'm sorry, and there's no excuse. I can't make an excuse for what I did. It's what I did, but how do we move forward? I think another thing you can do, and I think everyone should do this, is the way to make amends is to use your story to help others. Everything that happens to us happens for a reason. Everything is for our good. Everything. If it's bad, it's still for your good. So how do you turn it for your good? Turn it into an opportunity to help others. You didn't go through it by mistake. What are the lessons you learned? And how can you help others to either get through that or not to make the same mistake that you made? We got to start looking forward and stop looking behind. It's hard to move forward in your life if you're constantly turned around, right? Think about your car. Your windshield that you look out of it to drive is huge, yet that rearview mirror up there is really small. It's because what's in front of you is much more important than what's behind you. So let's make sure that we're focusing on today and what we need to do for today to help us for tomorrow. And as I mentioned before, everything works together for your good. Everything. So this was hard for me today to get on here and to admit the mistakes that I made, and the mistakes that I made that was hardest for me to get over. I hope that it has helped you in some kind of way. It's important for you to have peace and to have joy in your life, to not only forgive others, but to learn to forgive yourself. Please take the time to forgive yourself. These are my pearls for wisdom for this week. I've not decided what we're talking about next week yet, but I'll be back on next week, Monday, and we'll talk again. Thank you. Have a great week.